a lot of what human intelligence, not human intelligence like brains, but human intelligence spy work, like spy world stuff, is called intelligence. Humant is called human intelligence, and that's secrets that come from people. A lot of the human intelligence operations world is based around fabricating authenticity in order to capture the attention of somebody who has secrets. And then that loyalty that they develop to you because they follow you, because you're their leader, that loyalty is so powerful that they end up compromising the secrets that they were trusted to keep. But for you, you're not being genuine. You've just created an artificial persona, and you've managed your authenticity so that they believe you are who you present yourself to be. Right? That's what being undercover is really all about. It's all about having the opportunity to fabricate a relationship, simulate a relationship, specifically to get intelligence so that you can keep Americans safe. That's the secret sauce, is in making it seem authentic and real. If you're disciplined, or if you're courageous, or if you're strong, those things all work too. But the real magic is someone who's disciplined and strong and courageous authentically is what makes people follow them.
How would charisma fit into that, or what is your thought on charisma?
Charisma is an interesting thing because charisma is something that gives us familiarity. Charisma is candy, right? Charisma is sugar. If somebody is good at what they do and they're genuinely good at it, you don't need charisma. If someone is truly authentic and you just like them, how many friends do you have who are not charismatic, right? I'm sure you have plenty. Because they're a real person. They're a genuine good person. They see life the same way I see life. They care about the same things I care about. They're I have a friend who I call a social hand grenade, right? Edwin, a good buddy of mine. He's a total social hand grenade. You take that guy anywhere, he is going to say something that pisses half the room off.
You always need that guy with you. You always need the guy that'll do that, or jump on the table, or drink too much. It makes it more fun. I always try to make sure I invite somebody like that whenever there's something going on.
But I'd follow Edwin into battle any day of the week, right? He is an authentic, genuine person. Now, when you have that authenticity and charisma layers on top of it, that's a powerhouse. But when you have somebody who has no business being a leader, but they also have charisma, that's a dangerous combination, right? That's diabetes in the making, right there. That's your soda pop and all of your sugar-laced sauces and all the stuff that's causing weight issues in America right now, right? That's sugar with no substance. The same thing happens in leadership. Someone who's no substance and all charisma is a dangerous person.
If somebody isn't getting the result they want, then the person they are isn't the person to get that result. Like, you fundamentally have to change the person to change the outcome.
Right.
And a lot of people struggle with that idea that if the outcome I'm getting isn't what I want, we're so, there's so many things attached to our identity. And we're so locked in that we have a hard time reinventing who we are in that sense. And so from the outside looking in, how would you explain to somebody how to reinvent themselves, right?
Yeah, so there's so much wisdom in what you just said, right? Have you ever heard people say, like, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again? And yet you're exactly right. People see it, they're not achieving a certain result, and they don't want to do the work, or they're afraid to even consider that there might be something fundamentally flawed with them as a person right now. So then they try to externalize it and find blame somewhere else. That's why everybody hates their boss, right? Because their boss is always the one holding them back. The boss isn't the one holding you back. The boss may be a contributing factor in the fact that you're not hitting the result, but it's not the only factor. Right, and the boss is a manageable factor once you're willing to do the work on yourself. One of the things that CIA teaches us is that we have these skills or preferences, right, that we're born with, they're not born with, but they're developed in us when we're very young. We don't even realize they're happening, right? For some people, they're really good at problem solving. For some people, it's a creative vision. For some people, it's a desire for learning, whatever it might be. And we don't value them because they're so natural to us, right? My son is really good with color. He can look at a picture and then take a blank sheet of paper and he can recreate the same shades and colors and palettes and everything, right? He doesn't even realize it's impressive. He's 9. I look at it, I can look at a picture of Superman, and then I can have a black and white picture of Superman, and I cannot remember what part of the suit is red, white, blue, or yellow. I just know they're in there, but I don't know where they go. I have to reference back and forth. It's super hard for me, right? When you don't value the talent that you have, you tend to throw it away. But then what happens as you get older, that talent, even though you don't value it, it keeps coming back to you, right? And then you get it again. You're good at speaking. Well, what's that going to be? That doesn't help me that doesn't help me in algebra right now in 10th grade. So whatever. And then it comes back and it hits you in the chest or it hits you in the forehead when you're in 12th grade. And you're like, I'm good at speaking. Well, that doesn't get me a date to prom, so you throw it away. And then it comes back and hits you when you're 19 years old. And you're like, you just keep throwing these talents away, but they keep coming back because they're ingrained in you, right? It's what you're good at. You can't throw it away. It's wired into you. So CIA teaches us that you have to trust those talents and recognize those talents are essentially your competitive advantage in the game of intelligence. Because the game of intelligence is just the game of life with higher stakes. You're not just making friends to make friends. Now you're making friends to steal secrets, right? You're not just going for a walk to the grocery store. You're going for a walk to the grocery store if somebody's following you. So it's just higher stakes. But you learn how to become the highest version of yourself when you embrace these talents that you've been devaluing your whole life. And then you start taking them on and owning them. So a lot of times, to get back to your point, fundamentally changing yourself often just starts with accepting what you're good at. And instead of devaluing it because you think everybody's good at it, guess what? Not everybody's good at everything. Not everybody is good at the same thing you're good at. So let yourself be good at it. That will fundamentally shift you, which will fundamentally shift the result. You're good at 2 or 3 things, own it. It's going to change the result, right? We worry that changing ourselves is a lot of work, not realizing that sometimes it doesn't take a lot of work at all to experiment with the way that you're naturally wired. Just let it happen.
And so what if the things that you're good at don't fit into the situation you're in?
I think that's a valid concern, because oftentimes the situation that we're in is a situation that we've been led to, right? Other people have driven us to the place that we're at. Mom and dad drive you to college. They encourage you to get a degree that's in the hard sciences so that you get a responsible job, so that you do whatever. I'm sure you remember, everybody had advice for you when you were going to school, or everybody had advice to you when you were getting your first job, right? For my wife, it was her grandmother and her mother insisting that she got a degree in accounting. Just become an accountant. You'll always have a job. You'll always have a good salary. You'll always be in need, right? So there's plenty of clients that I have now who come from financial backgrounds. They're investors, or they ran investment portfolios. They're accountants. They're CFOs, and they're miserable. But they did what other people told them to do. And now they're professionals and really skilled in this job that they just don't like, right? It's not fulfilling, it's not challenging, it's the same thing literally, because numbers never change, week in and week out, day in and day out, right? So they can't shift themselves to love where they are, because it's a completely different target. Where they actually want to be is somewhere else. When they shift who they are, they will get where they want to be. Now, does that mean that they have to leave behind everything they built? Absolutely not, right? Do you remember ever being in a bad relationship, like having a girlfriend?
Yeah, for sure.
Guys we answer yes so fast, right? So, do you all remember?
I can see your face.
I'm sorry to be the one to bring it up right now.
No, I mean, I'm to blame more than she is now. Looking back, it was more me than it was her.
But inevitably what happens, especially when we're young, we're dating the wrong person. So what do we do when we break up? We date someone who's the total opposite of the person we just broke up with, right? That doesn't make any logical sense if you think about it. You were dating this first person for a reason. There was more about them that you liked than what you didn't like. So really, if you compare it to like shooting a gun, you're just 5 or 10 degrees off of the target. But instead, when we break up, we become so emotionally invested that we're like, I got to go in the complete opposite direction. So the same thing happens when we try to reinvent ourselves. We're like, oh my gosh, I'm an accountant. Oh my gosh, I'm a CFO of a $5 million business. What have I done with my life? I need to go back to ground zero. I need to reset everything and start all over again. And I'm going to go become a monk, or I'm going to go volunteer myself to, whatever. It's what I tried to do when I left the military. I tried to go into the Peace Corps to go 180 degrees different, right? What I didn't realize, and what many people don't realize, is you're already 90% of where you want to be. You just may not want to be the CFO of a $5 million company. But all that education and experience that you developed, you can become an entrepreneur on your own. You can become an advisor, a strategic advisor. You can become a consultant. There's all sorts of places that you can go where you now leverage the skills that you've developed and leverage the natural talent you already had.
So let me give you an example. I want to come back to the girlfriend thing because that's a question I have a little bit later on. So I was very introverted as a kid, good at fixing businesses, but very hidden behind the scenes. I didn't, there was never a meeting where everybody got together and I was giving a rally speech. I ended up running a big $300 million company. I would have my manager speak. I was never, if I ever had to give a speech, I would break out in hives. And I read a book by the former CEO of IBM called Even Elephants Can Dance, and he talked about how he was an introvert and didn't, and so I grabbed onto that. I was like, hey, you can do it, and not be out in front, sort of a thing, right? And then I used to be in this group of these 8 guys. It was kind of like a mastermind. And it was the greatest mastermind because we met once a month, but you had an hour to talk about whatever you had going on in business. And then everybody would give you their input or their ideas. And you had a mix in the room of, different people. One guy was really good with the internet. One guy was good with insurance and finance. And then, my best friend, kind of to this day, I met him in that room, but we were getting together and they were talking about how he had done a presentation on tear sheets, which is an old advertising kind of, strategy where it looks like somebody tore out a newspaper page, folded it up and wrote a little handwritten sticky note on there that said hey, Chris, you should check this out, J. And they were called J letters. And he did a whole presentation to this room of 500 people about it. And I said to him, why were you doing that? I thought you were in a different industry. Why are you doing that? He goes, I was just practicing public speaking. And I said, I hate public speaking. I hate it. And he looked at me and I go, it's not for me. And he goes, and he looked right at me and he goes, you better get over it because I don't know anybody successful that can't walk up in front of an audience and get them to believe what you want. And in that moment, I decided that I was going to get over it. And I reinvented myself. And now people pay me to go speak. And so am I unhappy? No, I'm very happy when I go out and speak to a crowd and I affect them in a positive way. But I had to reinvent. And was I naturally a speaker? No, I had to put a lot of work into it. And I still put work into it. And I'm still trying to get better because inside, I kind of know that if I don't put in the work, I'm going to get caught, So I have to put in the work. And so that's a reinvention of something that wasn't natural, but I can affect more people in a positive way if I'm good at this thing that there's tons of jokes about how public speaking is keen to death, or what is that Seinfeld joke that most people would rather be dead, so the guy giving the obituary would rather be in the casket, right? I can relate to that. I felt that. And so don't you think that there are certain things, there has to have been things that you maybe weren't naturally good at, but you had to reinvent your frame of those things and then you had to practice them in order to succeed. And it wasn't, it wasn't making you unhappy or happy. It was just something necessary in the path.
Yes, I would agree with what you're saying. I would also, to put some of my own vocabulary into it, right? I would say that another way of talking about the word reinvention in this example is a reframing, right? Unless I don't understand it, you still, by default, don't get excited to public speak. But
No, I do now.
you do get excited now.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, you've totally
But it took a
reconditioned.
while.
But so that period of time was you reconditioning yourself, creating new neural pathways, creating new preferences, right, for the act of public speaking. That's all work that you did. The thing that started you on that road was that one conversation where somebody you trusted said, you better get over it, right? That moment was a reframe. You already knew you wanted to be successful. You already knew that you were successful at the time. And now here's someone saying, this thing will hold you back from the success you could have. When you looked at public speaking through that lens, it was a new frame. It was a whole new way of considering the problem. And now all of a sudden, it was a problem that you wanted to resource, tackle, and overcome. Because you had rationalized your way to understand there's a larger purpose, a purpose that's larger than the discomfort that comes from public speaking, right? And even now, when you talk about it just a second ago, what you're talking about is maximizing your impact, right? So that tells me that what you were thinking to yourself was, it's not that it's going to hold me back in terms of dollars and cents. It's not that it's going to hold me back in terms of how I define success. It's going to hold me back because there's a larger impact that I could have if I get past this fear of public speaking. And that was worth the work to recondition yourself.
So fresh, so new.